This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
I get excited about waking up in the morning to do the work that I do, to learn more, to educate more people about what the options are. And when I tell people about family-involved death care or the variety of disposition options that are available out there beyond flame cremation and a traditional burial, and they kind of go, "You can do that? Wow."
This is the Heart of Hospice podcast with Helen Bauer. End-of-life doula and home funeral guide Trina Wacasey is my guest today. Whether you're a family caregiver or an end-of-life professional, the Heart of Hospice podcast is here to enhance your hospice experience by connecting you with information you can use about end-of-life care.
This episode of The Heart of Hospice is sponsored by Odonata Care. When caring for a loved one on hospice, support becomes essential. Introducing the Care Plan, a path to comfort for the hospice patient, a supportive guide by experienced hospice nurses Nancy Hireman and Brenda Kazire. Nancy and Brenda invite you to experience all that the Care Plan has to offer. Be sure to check out their free library of care videos on thecareplan.net or on YouTube. Purchase your copy of the Care Plan today at thecareplan.net. The sponsor for this week's episode is Barbara Carnes Books, featuring the work of award-winning hospice RN educator Barbara Carnes. BK Books is proud to offer the End-of-Life Guidelines series, a compilation of 5 essential education booklets designed to support those caring for terminally ill loved ones. Visit bkbooks.com today to order the End-of-Life Guidelines series to support your journey of compassionate caregiving.
Oh, this conversation today was so great. My guest today, Trina Wacasey, is doing some amazing work. You're going to love this conversation. She is a proponent of doing death differently, passionate about educating and empowering her clients and explaining their choices. She's got a lot of experience walking with clients through medical aid in dying, which we refer to as MAID in the interview, and also VSED, which is voluntarily stopping eating and drinking. Trina is also a home funeral guide, and she is a big encourager when it comes to families and friends and community involvement in the care of a loved one at home before and after death occurs. One of the unique offerings that Trina provides in her doula work includes a mini mobile suite that she utilizes for MAID and for after-death care, and you're going to hear more about that during the interview. To connect with Trina and learn about the services she's providing and to access the home funeral checklist that she provides, you can go to creatinghonoring.spaces.com. Trina got started in end-of-life work as a volunteer working with the bereavement counselor at a hospice agency. She thought about becoming a chaplain until she heard about the work of an end-of-life doula, and she was hooked, she said. She calls the work that she does not home funerals, but she calls it family death care or family-involved death care. Her mission is really to help guide and support people so that they can experience the kind of after-death care that they are comfortable with, that feels personal and like a good fit for them. So check out her website at creatinghonoringspaces.com. Check out the resources and see what she's doing. Look at the videos that she has there about the mini mobile suite. As always, we hope you enjoy this conversation with end-of-life doula Trina Wacasey. Trina, it's so great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We are going to have such a good conversation today because nurses and end-of-life doulas, we just work hand in hand. It's the perfect combination.
I agree.
So I can't wait to dig into this. But I want to start sort of at the beginning with you. Your work background is really in the corporate world.
Right.
How in the world did you find yourself working as an end-of-life doula?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, isn't it? So my background has been in training and development. And I worked in training and development for about 25 years. And I started in the public sector. Always thought the brass ring for me would be to be in corporate training and development. So finally got that opportunity, got that great job and in my hometown of Houston. And I loved it. I got to travel the world, buy nice things. But over a period of time, I realized it just wasn't feeding my soul. You know, it felt like the work that I was doing just wasn't that meaningful or purposeful. And so it's hard for me to get excited about waking up every morning and going to a job where it's like, who cares? And, you know, I had started my educational background in sociology. And then somewhere along the way, I changed it to business because I thought that would be more intelligent to make a good living if I had a business degree. I feel like I'm coming back around to sociology again later in my career. I had done some volunteering in hospice after a particularly difficult divorce, and I did bereavement counseling. I helped the bereavement counselor, loved that work, and it really helped to set my loss in perspective. You know, when I was sitting there listening to other people talk about losing a loved one, 50-year relationship. And so that's really where I started thinking about hospice and loving the notion. I took a sabbatical from my job in corporate and decided I liked hospice. I thought about becoming a chaplain. And there is a program at Berkeley called the Interfaith Chaplaincy Program. And I was really drawn to that, curious about that, was going in that direction to become a chaplain. And then someone told me about doulas, end-of-life doulas. And I thought, well, that sounds fascinating. What's that? I love the practical, hands-on. I could immediately get in there and experience and help. I love that aspect rather than more education, pursuing another degree and the theoretical. I just like that practical aspect. So I got my training at the Conscious Dying Institute in Boulder, Colorado, and just fell in love with the work. And it does just feel it just feeds your soul. You do feel so much more meaningful and purposeful every day when you wake up thinking, I get to learn something that's going to help someone make their dying experience easier.
That's awesome. I absolutely love it that as a volunteer, you weren't at the bedside, which is very valuable, right? Hospice volunteers that see patients and their caregivers in their homes, that's so valuable. But that you were volunteering with the bereavement program.
Yeah, I loved it.
What did you like so much about it?
We were having important conversations about things that really matter, you know?
Right.
Maybe it's because I'm an introvert, I don't know, but I prefer to have one-on-one conversations with people rather than talking with a lot of people in a group. And I prefer to have really deep and meaningful conversations. And that's what we were having. It's interesting because when I was volunteering, I was working full-time, and these sessions would be on Saturdays for a couple of hours. And so typically those would be those special weekends, you know, that I could be out doing something else. And I just loved spending time with other people talking about things that matter, really reflecting back on life and death and those intimate conversations at the end and focusing in on what's most important in life.
Yeah, that's the nature of why this work is so appealing, because it is so rich. It's so deep and reflective and so connecting for all of us.
It is. It is. Yeah. We're all going to experience death. And so I'm fascinated to learn how people do it differently.
So speaking of doing things differently, end-of-life doulas each have their own skill set, different things that they offer, services, if you will, that they offer based on what their strengths are and also what their interests are. I have a friend that's a doula. She's also a hospice nurse. She doesn't do advanced care planning because she absolutely hates the paperwork, which is one of those backlashes you get from being a nurse for a long time, right? We deal with a lot of paperwork. But she does a lot of ritual work, and she's really, really hands-on at the bedside during the dying process. What are the services that you include, and what are your strengths as a doula that you really like to lean into?
I am especially drawn to, I call it family-involved death care. Some people call it home funerals. I call it family-involved death care because it seems to me to be a little bit more meaningful, because when you say funeral and home, they're thinking, is a casket going to be brought in? They confuse what you do in a funeral home and think you're just going to do that at home. Family-involved death care is involving the family and really being taking care of their loved one after death, just as many times they take care of them before they die at home on hospice. What I tell people is it's very similar experience. If you've taken care of them, it's not going to be that different. I was introduced to the idea by another friend and mentor, Karen Van Buren. She spoke at our doula training, and she talked about working in an assisted living facility when she was younger, where when a person died, their friends would come in and take care of them, take care of their body, wash their body, dress their body, sit with them, laugh, sing, talk, cry, put flowers, play music. There wasn't a rush. And then when they were ready, they would carry their person out the front door on a gurney to the awaiting transport vehicle. The front door, not the back door. We don't lock all the doors and go out the back entrance and tell everybody not to look.
Right, like you're hiding it. Yeah.
Yeah. And when she mentioned that to me during the training, it immediately lit a light. I'm thinking, of course, why don't more people do that? It just makes so much sense. It's so beautiful, honoring, intimate, loving. And so I educate and empower people to consider that as an option when their loved one dies. I realize it's not going to be for everyone, and we're in a very death-phobic culture, but I try to help them understand that, again, it's not that different than when they're at home on hospice during the dying process. It's actually very similar. I love the idea of families and friends overseeing the care instead of strangers taking the body away. When my dad died, they said, this is a common phrase you hear, we've got them in our care.
Right.
And when that happened back in 2012, I thought, that really does make me feel good.
Right. They're looked after. Yeah. You don't have to worry. Yeah.
But I have apprenticed at a number of funeral homes, helping prepare bodies for viewing and such, which has been a fantastic experience to work behind the scenes. And in our care, they're not doing anything wrong. It's just in our care means they're in a communal cooler. Their bodies are in a communal cooler. Right. And that to me doesn't feel very loving and honoring and caring. And so I feel like we can do better. And when it's my person, I want to do something that really is special, that's better than that. As a home funeral guide, I can walk people through that process and give them a sense of confidence and competence that they can do that. And we find typically that at first they're not sure, many, and they kind of hold back. And then as time progresses, they move forward and we move back, the home funeral guide. And sometimes it's a mix of both. But just to give them a sense of calm and confidence that I can do this. And then working with several progressive funeral homes who will come in at any point and remove the body if that's what you want. I typically suggest just a couple of hours after they die is fine, which might lead to a day or 2 or 3. It's up to you, but you get to create that experience that honors your loved one and that aligns with their life. Their death is very similar.
Well, isn't the family involved death care, right? Doing these things afterwards, isn't it really just a continuation? You've been this caregiver for this person, mom, dad, spouse, sibling, whoever, for however long, sometimes years for some people, depending on what that experience has been like for them. So to do it just a little bit longer after the death has occurred, it's just a continuation of caregiving.
Thank you for that. Yeah. I completely agree. But I think people don't know. They don't think about it. They don't think they can. They don't know that it's legal.
Right.
They're not sure. And I get that because if they've not experienced a death before, it is unfamiliar. And that's the value of having someone come in and guide you through it. But to me, it's so similar.
Plus the grieving that's going on. So when you're trying to do these things to care for the body after the death has occurred, the grief and the overwhelm that comes with that, that's the perfect time to have a guide to say, okay, we talked about you're wanting to bathe your mom and that you wanted to have some flowers placed, and we can do that. I'll help you do that. Just to be there as a support person. And at some point, if it feels uncomfortable for them, explain what's going on and even allow them an out, like you were saying. Yeah. If it begins to feel uncomfortable or it's like a bad fit, or if the grief has become overwhelming.
Exactly.
You can change direction.
I love to share an experience that I had with a family up in San Francisco. The hospice social worker suggested that they must have talked to the social worker about what they wanted the ending to look like for the patriarch in the family who was dying at home on a hospice. They suggested they call a doula to come in to help. They were going to do a direct cremation. So when he died, the body was going to be sent off for direct cremation. But before that happened, they wanted to spend some time with him. And so they called my network. I work for the East Bay End of Life Doula Network, and I was chosen because that's sort of my specialty. And we went up, and a colleague and I went up to clean and take care of the body. It was interesting because they wanted us to do the work. That was the thought, that we would come in to take care of the body. Mm-hmm. However, it was a small apartment. They had a San Francisco 49ers football game playing. I think it was one of their big games. And so the 3 adult men were watching the game. Their dad was a big football fan, and mom was fixing things in the kitchen. People were coming and going and helping us move dad onto a massage table so that we could clean and dress him, and just coming in and being a part of it. There was a lot of flow. And I just loved that idea of it just being a natural, informal process. Again, a continuation of that hospice experience that he had been at home for quite a while. And it was unique, surreal, fun, informal, meaningful, purposeful. So I highly recommend that, especially for people who think about a direct cremation. This can be something you can do to have a bit of ceremony before your person is taken away.
Right. I think the important thing for people to know is there's no rush. There's no deadline. There's no law that says within an hour, your person has to be taken out of the home by the funeral staff. And I think this is really important for people to know about hospice people, because your hospice team should never tell you, for their own convenience, the convenience of the nurse who's coming to do a pronouncement or the social worker who's present there, well, we need for this to wrap up in about an hour. It's not about them. It is all about the people who are grieving and whatever ritual has meaning for them. And we know it's not a good fit for everybody, right?
Right.
For the situation that you're describing, to me, that sounded like a family holiday or the Super Bowl where the family's all together. Mom may be in the kitchen, dad's in the living room with the guys watching the game, and there's snacks and there's conversation. That's just part of the flow of a family culture. So you can do that for these after death rituals. And if it doesn't look like that with noise and people coming and going, you can create a sacred space that's quiet. And I want to dip into that because you also do that. You have something special to provide an environment, because not everybody wants that in their own home or can do it conveniently in their home. You have something called a mini mobile suite. And I want to hear the details about that because I think this is really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my mini mobile suite, that's what I call it, is a small RV. It's about 8 by 10. It's a towable RV. The manufacturer I love, it's a small startup in LA called Happier Camper. So it looks like a little happy RV. I bring that to a client's property if they feel like having the decedent in the home is just a little too much. So it provides a little bit of a neutral zone. So I bring it to their property. Obviously, there needs to be a flat place, a private place to place it. But it's just big enough, and it has a big hatch in the back that opens up to make it easy to lay a body in, to take the body out, for people to be around their loved one. They can clean the body there, dress the body there in privacy, and it can be an opportunity for a vigil, a wake, family to come over, friends to come over and be near their loved one. It has windows that pops up all around it. So if you don't want to be too close, but you want to be there, you can kind of be as close or as far away as you want. It's a bright and happy little vehicle, unlike a hearse, that just is somber and serious. And so it has a little bit of levity to it, but definitely safety and security and informality that I like, where my clients can decorate it any way they want. And I'll help them with that, or I'll just drop it off for them and they can create an experience that works for them.
I like that idea. So I think it's important for us to say this is not for everyone.
That's true.
There is a great deal of fear and unknown that surrounds death for us because we have become so removed from it. Mm-hmm. But having the mini mobile suite for people that don't want to have the body in the house, or maybe not everybody in the household wants to be participating in those kinds of rituals and care, it gives a separate space that's not in a cooler.
In the middle of everything.
Right. So if you've got a big family and you want this to happen, but you feel like there's not a great place to do it inside your own home that could be calm and quiet, and spacious enough, the mini mobile suite is a great place to do that.
Absolutely. And another purpose for the mini mobile suite is for my clients who choose medical aid in dying, which is an option that's legal here in California. It's legal in 11 states. But I thought, wouldn't it be neat if the last thing you saw when you took your last breath was the Pacific Ocean or redwood forest, or just to be out in nature somewhere in a private setting? And so I set it up for that purpose. And that was another idea I had for it. The other thing is it can just be a transport vehicle for the family to transport their loved one's body to either the crematory or to a natural green burial. We have a wonderful green cemetery about 45 minutes from here, Parissima Cemetery in Half Moon Bay, just overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And so families can use a mini mobile suite to transport their person to Parissima and carry them and lay them into the burial space themselves.
So it gets away from some of the more traditional death care, riding in the hearse with the big casket, something a little bit different, a little more personal, being able to personalize it. I love the vibe of that. Very cool.
I do too. There was a Peggy Lee song called "Is That All There Is?" Do you remember that song?
I do.
It makes me think of that when I think of funerals and such. It's like, is that all there is? Yeah. I just feel like there's so much more that we can do if we are confident to lean in and have some courage and bring people along who can help us. The experience can be so much more meaningful and healing than going to a formal funeral setting where everybody sits and looks forward and looks at the back of everybody's heads. I just feel like it can just be so much more.
I agree. I will say that if sitting formally and looking at the back of somebody else's head is a comfortable way for you to manage your grief, more power to you.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But I have been to funerals and then sat in the car driving home with my husband. And my thought is this as good as it gets? This is the best we could do. This is the only option we've got. And I look at him and those are some of my best advanced care plan conversations with him. Right. Because I'm like, don't ever do that with me.
Right.
Or would you like this? I noticed this. This was something special. Or I remember there was something about embalming, the thought of embalming. This was probably a year or two ago. And I realized I did not want to be embalmed. I don't want to be buried in that particular traditional way after being embalmed. And so that's when I began to look at the human composting, which is a very interesting option. It's environmentally friendly. It's got a very low carbon footprint. And so that's one of the reasons I love having these conversations on the show, is to let people know there are so many different options and you don't have to figure it out for yourself. There are home funeral guides like Trina Wacasey. There are end-of-life doulas all over the country who can help guide you through this. People who have connections and they've done this before and they can guide you in these rituals. And when the grief gets really bad, this is someone there to support you as you walk through it.
Exactly. Yeah. And thank you for reminding me, that if that formal funeral is your thing, that's good. That's fine too. Right. I did that with my father. And frankly, I learned so much after my experience with his death and dying. And then when I did my doula training, I was looking at all the pieces and I was thinking, it could have been different. Yeah. I went to a funeral recently, a realtor who was showing us property for years and years, very kind person. She died. And I went to the funeral. It was in a funeral home. And I mainly wanted to meet her 3 sons and tell them how wonderful it was, how much we loved their mother. And she was just such a lovely person. And so I went and I sat down and they came up and there were a lot of people around and I talked to them. I got that opportunity. I was sort of looking through the brochure and there was one little picture of her sitting, it was a memorial service, not a funeral. The body wasn't there. A little picture of her. And then this very formal ceremony was going to happen. And it appeared that the minister really didn't know her. And I thought, I can't do this. And there were so many people coming and going that I snuck out before it started. Because I thought I did what I wanted to do. I came in to tell her sons that she was a special person. But I just feel like it could be so much better than that.
What I hear you saying is that it didn't have any meaning for you. It wasn't meaningful. So I'm the same way. And I had a personal experience with this. And I think a lot of people go through this when they're looking for an officiant for a funeral or a memorial service. A lot of times they're going to get somebody that does not know the person who has died. My grandmother was that way. She had belonged to the same church for 50 years, small country church, but they had changed pastors, and she had never actually met this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So he began talking, and I'm like, that's not true. That's very superficial. Basically reading an obituary, the start and the end dates, and not really talking so much in a deeper way about who she was in between those two events. And
Exactly.
I think a lot of people have to deal with that, right? You don't necessarily get an officiant that knows your person in any sort of meaningful way.
Right. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I just invite people to consider the options.
Right.
If it doesn't feel comfortable, that's okay too. But it can be so much richer and deeper and more meaningful and honoring an exclamation point at the end of a life instead of a fizzle.
This conversation is so good, but we're going to take a quick break. Hang on for more great content.
If you're a hospice caregiver looking for resources to enhance your care, look no further than the Hospice Care Plan, A Path to Comfort. Available in both English or Spanish, this invaluable resource is designed to support caregivers in providing the best possible care for their loved ones. The Hospice Care Plan from Oda Care now has integrated QR codes in each section of the booklet. Readers simply scan the code with a smartphone, and a free playlist of videos provides practical tips for caregiving and symptom management. It's like having a personalized guide at your fingertips. Caregivers will find 150 videos offering expert advice and practical guidance to navigate every aspect of caregiving. Hospice agencies and end-of-life doulas are now using the Hospice Care Plan booklet to support their patients and caregivers. It's become a trusted resource in the end-of-life community, helping to educate and equip caregivers. Visit thehospicecareplan.com today to purchase the Hospice Care Plan booklet. Empower yourself and the ones you care for with the Hospice Care Plan, A Path to Comfort. That's thehospicecareplan.com. The sponsor for this week's episode is Barbara Carnes Books, featuring the work of award-winning hospice RN educator Barbara Carnes. BK Books is proud to offer the End of Life Guidelines series, a compilation of 5 essential education booklets designed to support those caring for terminally ill loved ones. At the heart of this bundle is Gone From My Sight, affectionately known as the Hospice Blue Book, a timeless resource that has touched over 40 million lives. This bundle is more than just information. It's a lifeline for families navigating the difficult stages of the dying process, offering guidance for the last months, weeks, days, and hours. Trusted by end-of-life workers nationwide, the booklets provide direction for managing symptoms, explain the dying process, address pain medication use, and offer suggestions for moving forward with grief. The End of Life Guidelines series bundle from Barbara Carnes equips you with knowledge and tools to provide the best possible care. The bundle helps hospice agencies better educate patients and families, providing easy-to-understand guidance that can improve scores on their CAHPS satisfaction surveys. It's the ultimate caregiver's companion. Use it as part of your care plan today. Visit bkbooks.com today to order the End of Life Guidelines series to support your journey of compassionate caregiving.
The advanced care planning things, I have a tendency to look at these funerals and do this. And my mother's 91. And so we've been talking about her advanced care planning. And my mom doesn't engage deeply in these conversations. It's too touchy-feely.
My mom doesn't either.
Yeah. She's 91. Maybe it's the generation and the way she was raised. So she said, well, you guys can just have a party. Have fun. And that doesn't work for me. That doesn't sound like it's going to bring me comfort. And I just let her go with it because I need to respect the fact that for her, this is an easier way, first of all, for her to deal with any anticipatory grief that she might be having over her own death.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the thought that her children would grieve deeply or in a complicated way, and so she can't process those feelings. So the easiest thing is just to say, well, just, have a party. It's like people saying,
Yeah.
oh, just dig a hole and throw me in. That's not an advanced care plan, just so people know. That's not an advanced care plan. That's a way of avoiding. That's a form of denial, if you ask me.
Exactly. Yes, I've heard lots of those kind of comments.
Yeah, just throw me in the ditch. And by the way, none of that's helpful to those of us who are actually trying to figure it out for you.
It isn't. My mom is 87, and I have lots of conversations with her about this, and she does not like the idea of family-involved death care. She just can't get her hands around it.
So she doesn't want you guys monkeying around, don't wash my face after I die.
No. And she's a nurse, and I thought that being a nurse, she'd kind of see the benefit of that.
Right.
I don't know. It's interesting because, she saw a lot of death as a nurse, but I don't think she was working, cardiac care nurse. I don't think in the ICU that you really get to spend a lot of time afterwards with that nurturing, loving ritual.
Oh,
and
no,
so
they don't have space and time for that.
No, so she didn't get to really experience what that was like. So she has a difficult time seeing the value in it. And that's cool too. I'm not trying to convince people they should do something they don't feel comfortable with, just to present an opportunity and an option. Like I was presented with when Karen spoke about it. It's like, yes, that sounds great. So my husband knows he has to do this for me when I die. He's not so sure.
Are you comfortable with your mother's decisions? How does that feel to you?
I am. I feel like she feels like at her age, there wouldn't be very many people coming to her funeral anyway. And, so like a direct cremation is just simple and easy. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if I'm there and I have the opportunity, I'm going to spend time with my mom. And if I want to clean her and dress her, that's what I'm going to do. Her and I are very close. I'm the only daughter, and I've got 3 brothers. So I think she would be fine with that, knowing that it's just me there taking care of her. But I hope I'm there towards the end and can provide her that kind of comfort. But to me, it's just honor and respecting. Yeah. And that's the way I want to honor her out.
And of course, we know that not everybody that is a caregiver has a loving and accepting relationship with the person they are caring for. Because a lot of times caregivers are in forced or obligatory caregiving relationships. It doesn't mean there are warm and fuzzy feelings. There can be history of abuse. They may be distant in relationship and still providing caregiving, because we know that happens. So there's no death ritual shaming here, right?
Right. No, not at all.
Yeah, because if that's something fantastic, like your brothers, if your mother was comfortable with it or had said, you guys just do whatever, rituals bring you comfort, would your brothers be comfortable participating in something like that?
I think they would, yes. My younger brother, definitely. My older brothers would be probably building a coffin or something because they work with their hands. And
that's very cool.
So they're very, I think they would be busying themselves with something. Mm-hmm. I think that they would want to be involved, honestly. And even when you have a difficult relationship with a person that died, like my father who died back in 2012, he was a very difficult person to know and be with, very emotionally distant. And his body was rushed away. In a way, I wish that we would have had more time to spend and just sort of think about the culmination of a life and all of our experiences. One doula even talked about if you want to yell and scream at them, you can do that because you can get it out. Right. That's okay.
Anything short of physically hurting the body.
Hurting the body. Right. Yeah, that would be inappropriate.
Right.
But sometimes we just need to work through that. Well, we always need to work through grief, and it can happen in many different ways.
So really, these rituals that we're talking about, the family-involved death care, this is about sitting with the grief, letting it wash over you, sort of immersing yourself in it, and providing meaning inside that grief experience. And it's going to look a bazillion different ways, right? Because it's customizable, very personal for each person.
Right. It's just leaning in and being with your person, however you want to be with them. I've had many clients who they didn't even touch the body. The body was just there. It was clean. The body was clean. They had been cared for as they were dying. So they covered the body with. I'm looking over at a bed over here and remembering beautiful quilt and flowers. The window was open, breeze was coming in, there was jazz music playing, and people could come and go and spend time with the decedent. It was just a beautiful situation. So you don't have to do anything a certain way. If just having them in a room where you can go in and spend time and other people can come and go and spend time, that's fine too. And I love the variety of options and opportunities. Sometimes when you've been caregiving, you're just so worn out and wiped out. And you have had that closure that you needed. And so when they die, you're ready for the next thing that happens. There was a client that I had whose mother was dying, and she lived close to her, just couple houses away. So she was very close to her mom. She had some siblings who came in when she was dying to be there and to help. I told her, that when her mom dies, that death is an emergency. If you need to spend time with her, that's fine. If she dies at 2:00 in the morning, for instance, you don't need to call hospice to immediately come out and do anything.
Right. There's nothing illegal about that. That's fine.
That's right. And so that is what happened. And she did tell her siblings that she wanted to spend time with her mother and not immediately call the mortuary to transport the body. And they thought she was kind of weird. And she said, Trina, thank you for giving me the permission to spend time with my mother because it meant so much to me. And I thought, isn't that sad that she felt like she needed permission? But I'm glad that I offered it and that she took advantage of that extra time that she needed with her mom.
Yeah, but it's some validation, especially if you've got a sibling group where you're the only one that has that particular need for grieving, because we all grieve differently. And so a closer connection with the body for this particular woman was important part of her grief. But to have somebody on the outside say, that's normal. It's not weird. It's not gross. It's not inappropriate. And if this is what you want to do, then go ahead. I think it's important to have that type of validation.
Yeah.
Because even inside family groups, you may have a brother, sister that are interested in participating in a ritual, and then have other siblings, other family members that are like, we don't want to do that. We don't even want to see her after she's died. How many times have you had somebody say, I want to remember them the way they were?
Exactly.
Yeah, I've heard that so many times. I want to remember them healthy and talking and whole and living.
Yeah. And that's okay too.
Yeah, that is okay. That is okay. It's a coping
doing
mechanism.
Other things. They can be watching the 49ers on TV or, fixing tea in the kitchen or whatever. And that's okay too.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that that's an unhealthy coping mechanism or a denial. I just think that it is a coping mechanism. It's neutral. It's not anything good or bad one way or the other.
I agree. And sometimes people think they don't want to be close, but they don't know until the time comes. It's interesting. Some people think they will gravitate and want to be close and take care of the person. And then they change their mind and say, no, I don't think I can do it. Yeah. And sometimes the opposite is true, that they say, no, I don't want to participate. And then they see the value and they're taking care of their loved ones. So it's really hard to know until death occurs how people are going to respond. That's why I like to provide these options like the mini mobile suite, having a home funeral guide come in like me to show them how it can be done, what some options are, help however they want me to help, and then work with a progressive funeral home who's willing to be there when the family needs them to be there to pick up the body.
Yeah, I think that flexibility is super important, because you can make an advanced care plan and you can make a plan for when your person dies. But then when the event actually happens, grief feels different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. And so to be able to flex that plan and change it and say, you know what, I'm not quite ready to let go. I need a little bit longer. Stay with me. I thought I would want to be by myself, but I don't. Yeah. Or I thought we would want to have music and a lot of people, and really, I just want it to be me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that flexibility can have so much value and so much meaning for people.
One thing that I invite the funeral directors who I work with, and it's just a small handful, one thing I invite them to do when they get, it's called a first call, when somebody calls and says, I want to use, can you help me with a funeral? Can you help me with taking care of my loved one? It's called a first call. So I invite the funeral director, whoever's answering the phone, to say, would you like to keep your person at home for a bit of time, for an hour or two? Because if you would, we have a home funeral guide who can come in and help you. They don't have to do it with a home funeral guide, but if you want that help, that we have a home funeral guide who we work with who can come in and walk you through what's possible and bring some supplies and things like that. Because people don't know they have the option. And so if the funeral home can ask the question, I think more people would consider it and perhaps say yes.
Well, and I think the hospice team can do that as well. If you have hospice staff that are there with you, that is one of the things. And I tried to do that as a field nurse. When you get ready, there's no rush, no pressure. I will call the funeral home if that's what you want me to do. But you get to do this for as long as you'd like to. Yeah. And I'm happy to be here. I think the trend a lot of times, unfortunately, is drive-by death calls.
Yeah.
Where you go in, you do the pronouncement, get them squared away, call that funeral home, and they're out of the house and you're gone down the road to your next patient. That is not how hospice care should work. That is not what we should be providing for our patients and their families.
Agreed.
If you are a caregiver, just know that that's not the way it should look. And if you are a hospice worker, end-of-life worker, just know that that's not the kind of care you should be providing. We can do so much better than that.
I absolutely agree. Yeah. I even had a situation where I was helping with the medical aid in dying death. And it was up in San Francisco. The traffic, it's really gnarly. And they did a virtual pronouncement of death.
What?
Virtual.
A virtual? I have never.
The hospice did a virtual pronouncement of death.
Explain to me how that works. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, well, just with the phone, holding up, taking vitals and that kind of thing. So on the one hand, I thought, how novel, how flexible. On the other hand, I thought, is that a thing? Is that okay? Yeah. Maybe with COVID, there was
maybe during the pandemic,
that kind of thing happening. Yeah. I also know that there are some hospice workers who they just have such a caseload. They're doing the best that they can do as well. So I don't want to undermine the heavy caseload that they have. But when it comes to the death and dying, even when you're expecting the person, they're dying, even when you're expecting it, when it happens, it's a big deal. Sure. It's a big deal. And you want somebody there who can help you through that.
Right. And that is part of what hospice does.
It's supposed to do. That's right. That's the other great thing about being a doula, though. We can fill in the gaps.
Right. You get to linger there for as long as they need you. And that is one of the beautiful things about the nature of doula work. It really fills in the gaps where hospice is not able to be present.
And you were talking about your friend who's a hospice nurse and a doula. I think that's why he or she probably wanted to be a doula, because you want to spend time. That's what that's the meaningful stuff. Yeah. Instead of doing paperwork and running from place to place to place. That's what you really want to do.
Yeah, that's the rich part of things. The cream of it is being able to be at the bedside and supporting. It's very meaningful to do that. Of course, that was my favorite part of the work that I did when I was in the field. If you talk to a hospice nurse, they're never going to say, oh, my favorite part is all the documentation that I have to do.
Absolutely. Never. No.
Yeah, those aren't the memories that you keep. I can tell you about all these patient encounters and deaths that I was present for and how I supported families. I couldn't tell you a dang thing about all the paperwork I filled out.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's meaningless.
That's right. But they have to do the paperwork.
Right. It is meaningful to get paid, right? So, yeah, we don't want to negate that part, but there is so much more to it than that. So that's what I want to ask you now. How has working in end-of-life care changed you, Trina?
I get excited about waking up in the morning to do the work that I do, to learn more, to educate more people about what the options are. And when I tell people about family-involved death care or the variety of disposition options that are available out there beyond flame cremation and a traditional burial, and they kind of go, "You can do that? Wow." Or voluntarily stopping eating and drinking as an option for people to mitigate prolonged suffering who can't do MAID. They're like, "Really? You can do that?" And so I love, I feel like this work is so much more purposeful. And again, I get so excited. And I thank my husband for supporting me doing this, because he gets to go do what he loves and I get to do what I love. And I don't question anymore, is this purposeful and meaningful? I know that it is. I know that it's valuable.
If you could go back and talk to your 20-year-old self and tell your 20-year-old self what you were going to be doing for a living, what would you say about the work that you do?
I'd say, hang on, girl, you got some exciting stuff coming up. Strap yourself in. There's some bumpy roads, bumpiness along the way, but you're going to get to do some really fascinating stuff. So be patient, be prepared. It's interesting because I was thinking about corporate versus death, and some people love that corporate, and that's good too. But if I hadn't done that work, I might not be as good or as happy with this work now. If I had started with it, I don't know. So I feel like another song, I'm good at this, right? God bless a broken road that led me straight to you or to this work. I'm just so happy that I'm here.
Trina, how can my listeners find you, read about the services you provide and the work that you're doing?
They can go to my website, creatinghonoring-spaces.com. And one thing in particular on my website, I have a number of videos about the mini mobile suite and demonstrations and that sort of thing. But I have a family-involved death care checklist under resources on my website. And it's especially a useful step-by-step tool of different decisions that can be made and options that are available when you're thinking about doing family-involved death care. There's about 27 questions that I walk them through. So that could be helpful at helping people begin to get an idea of what this family-involved death care is all about.
Very useful. Thank you so much, Trina. I have loved talking about this. There's so much to explore when it comes to family-guided death care and home funerals. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with me.
It's my pleasure.
Be sure to catch the next episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast. You can find more episodes on theheartofhospice.com, and don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. You can connect with the Heart of Hospice on Facebook and Instagram and send your questions or comments by email to helen@theheartofhospice.com. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.